Did you really think you could move your parents into our house without asking me? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Ryan, my husband of 6 years, looked up from his laptop with a smirk that I had grown to hate. Oh, Amelia, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a while, and besides, you don't really have a say in this. His words felt like a slap in the face. This house, a lovely 2-story home in a quiet suburb, wasn't just any house. It was the home my grandparents had left me, where I wanted to raise our son, Lucas, away from the negativity of Ryan's family. Remember, the house is in my name. I replied, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Ryan's smug look faded, and he looked uncertain for a moment. Our 2-year-old son, Lucas, walked into the room, and I forced a smile for his sake. He didn't know about the tension between us. His chubby hands reached up for me, and I picked him up, kissing his forehead, trying to calm down. I'm not okay with this, Ryan. Your parents have never respected me or our space. Why now? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ryan shrugged, which made me even more frustrated. Their family, Amelia. You wouldn't understand. Family. The word echoed in my mind like a taunt. My own family, who ran a small but loved coffee shop in town, had always been my safe haven. The doorbell rang, interrupting our argument. Through the peephole, I saw them, Ryan's parents, with suitcases in hand, ready to invade our life. My heart sank. Fine, Ryan. Let them in, but this isn't over, I said, handing Lucas to him before opening the door. Amelia, darling, Ryan's mother said, walking past me without even looking at me. His father followed, a stern man who had barely acknowledged me since our wedding day. As they settled in, making themselves comfortable in my living room, I felt the familiar sense of being invaded. This was just the beginning, I realized. But as I watched them, something inside me changed. I was done being the obedient daughter-in-law, always bending to their wishes. I went into the kitchen, my mind racing. This was my home, my safe place, and I was ready to fight for it. The next few days became a blur of unwelcome changes. Ryan's mother, Elaine, had a way of making her presence felt in the most suffocating way. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my parenting, and acted like our home was hers. Lucas shouldn't be eating that, Amelia. It's not healthy, Helene said one morning as I prepared Lucas's breakfast. I held back a sharp response, feeling the familiar sting of her judgment. He's fine, Elaine. It's just cereal, I said, shaking my head. In our house, we believe in a proper diet. You really should learn. Her comments were like needles, each one poking at my patience. Ryan, as usual, was no help, lost in his work and unaware of the growing tension. One evening, as I put Lucas to bed, Elaine barged into his room. He's still not sleeping through the night. You must be doing something wrong, she said. Her words were a blow to my confidence, making me feel like a bad mother. I'm doing the best I can, I snapped, unable to hold back my frustration. Your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you had a real job and some structure in your life. I felt a surge of anger. This is my house, Elaine. You're just a guest here. Don't forget that. Her laugh was cold and dismissive. Oh dear, Ryan never mentioned how out of touch you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here. The next day, I hit my limit when I found Elaine in Lucas's room, going through his drawers. What do you think you're doing? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. I'm just organizing. This room is a mess, she said without even looking at me. That's it. I want you out of my house now. I shouted, feeling a mix of anger and desperation. Elaine turned to face me, looking surprised but not sincere. Your house? Oh, sweetie, you're just the wife. This is Ryan's house too, and he wants us here. I stormed out of the room, overwhelmed by thoughts. Ryan's betrayal, Elaine's intrusion, and how they ignore my feelings. It was all too much. I was tired of being pushed around and having my home taken over by people who didn't respect me. That night, as I lay in bed, I started to make a plan. I was going to take back control of my life, my home, and my son's future. Ryan and his parents had crossed a line, and they needed to understand that I wouldn't be their doormat anymore. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. A few days later, during a tense dinner, Ryan dropped a bombshell. My parents need to stay with us longer. Their house is being renovated, he said casually, as if it were no big deal. I felt my blood boil. Longer? Ryan, we never even talked about them staying here in the first place. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. It's just for a few more weeks. What's the big deal? The big deal is that your mother treats me like an outsider in my own home. I shouted, my frustration boiling over. Elaine, overhearing us, jumped in with her usual condescending tone. Amelia, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more accommodating. Their words only made me more determined. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I called my brother Alex, who had always been my support. They're taking over my life, Alex. I can't handle it anymore, I said, trying to hold back tears. Alex's voice was strong and encouraging. Amelia, you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them bully you. It's your house, so you make the rules. His words gave me the push I needed. I decided to confront Ryan, but this time, I would be ready. I gathered proof of Elaine's overbearing behavior, the messed up kitchen, the disturbed routines, and her constant belittling comments. The day of the confrontation arrived. I waited until Elaine and Ryan were in the living room. We need to talk. Now, I said, keeping my voice steady even though I was furious inside. Ryan looked up, surprised. What's this about, Amelia? He asked. It's about your parents, Ryan. Their constant interference and disrespect for my boundaries have to stop today, I said, holding up my list of complaints. Elaine scoffed. This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help. Help? By undermining me at every turn? By treating me like I don't matter in my own home? I shot back, my anger clear. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Amelia, they're my parents. We can't just kick them out, he said. No, Ryan. They're guests in my home, and they've stayed too long. Either they leave, or I do with Lucas, I said firmly, my determination clear. The room fell silent, and the weight of my words hung in the air. I saw the realization in Ryan's eyes, but it was Elaine who spoke first. You wouldn't dare, she hissed, losing her calm demeanor. Watch me, I replied, my voice steady with resolve. That night, Ryan's parents packed their bags. As they left, Elaine gave me a bitter look. You'll regret this, Amelia, she warned. But as the door closed behind them, I felt a huge relief. It was the first step in taking back my life, and I was ready for whatever came next. After Elaine and her husband left, the house was eerily quiet. Ryan's attitude turned cold and distant, and he barely interacted with me. I found comfort in the peace of my home and the happy laughter of Lucas. One evening, as Lucas played with his toys, Ryan said, I have to go on a business trip. I'll be gone for a few weeks. His tone was indifferent, as if his career mattered more than our troubled relationship. Fine, I replied shortly, hiding my relief at the thought of his absence. After Ryan left, the house felt different, almost freeing. I began to undo the changes Elaine had made, each small fix feeling like a win. But everything changed when I found a series of emails on Ryan's laptop, which he had left open. They revealed an affair, an ongoing betrayal that hurt more than his mother's snide comments. I was filled with anger, pain, and a deep sense of betrayal. It was time for Ryan to face the consequences of his actions. I started planning carefully, making sure that Ryan and his family would be held accountable for their deceit and manipulation. The first step was to get my financial and legal affairs in order. I contacted a lawyer, explained my situation, and began the process of filing for divorce. Next, I focused on the house, which represented my grandparents' legacy and my independence. I called a real estate agent. I want to sell the house quickly and quietly, I told her. The real estate agent looked surprised but noticed the urgency in my voice. Are you sure about this, Amelia? It's a big decision, she said. I've never been more sure of anything, I answered, feeling strong and determined after the betrayal. The house went on the market, and within days, offers started coming in. The thought of Ryan coming back to find he had lost his control over everything gave me a grim satisfaction. During this time, I reconnected with my family, finding strength in their support. We're here for you, no matter what, my father told me. As I watched Lucas play, unaffected by the chaos around him, I made a quiet promise to protect his happiness no matter what. Ryan's return was approaching, but I was no longer the woman he had left behind. I was ready to face him, equipped with the truth and a plan to take back my life. When the day came for Ryan to return, the tension in the air was thick. I had imagined this moment many times, and although I was prepared, my heart raced as I heard his key turning in the lock. Amelia, I'm home, Ryan called out, his voice echoing through the now changed space. I walked out of the kitchen, standing tall. Welcome back, Ryan. We need to talk, I said firmly. He looked around, noticing the changes I had made. What's going on? The house looks different. I stayed calm. I sold the house, Ryan. It's no longer ours. His face showed shock and anger. You did what? You can't just sell our house without telling me, he argued. It's my house, Ryan. And after what I found out, I don't think you get a say anymore. I replied, my voice calm but filled with anger. He scoffed, trying to hide his surprise. What are you talking about? The affair, Ryan. I know everything, I said, watching as his calm act fell apart. He tried to deny it, but it didn't last long. Amelia, it's not what you think, he begged. I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me and our family, I responded, my hurt clear in my voice. Ryan went from shocked to angry. You're overreacting. We can work through this, he said. There's no we anymore, Ryan. I filed for divorce, I said, handing him the papers. The conversation turned into a blur of accusations and denials, but I stood firm. The man I had married was gone, replaced by someone driven by selfish desires. As he stormed out, promising to fight the divorce, I felt a mix of freedom and worry. I had taken the first step toward a new life, but I knew the struggle wasn't over. In the weeks that followed, everyone learned about our situation. Ryan's parents, who had been so confident and overbearing, were now caught up in the fallout from their son's actions. They tried to contact me, but I ignored them completely. I focused only on Lucas and finalizing the divorce. When the court hearing day arrived, Ryan looked defeated, finally realizing the gravity of what he had done. The judge granted me the divorce and custody of Lucas, and I felt a sense of justice. Ryan's attempts to reconcile after the hearing were ignored. You made your choice, Ryan. Now live with it, I said, walking away from him for the last time. News of our divorce and Ryan's affair spread quickly, damaging his reputation and relationships. His parents, who had once been proud and judgmental, were now shunned by people who had previously respected them. As I walked out of the courthouse holding Lucas's hand, I realized this was not just an end but a new beginning, a fresh start for both of us, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like coming out of a long, dark tunnel into the light. I had regained control not just of the house, which was now sold, but of my life. Lucas, happily unaware of the adult issues, thrived on the love and stability I gave him. My days were busy but satisfying, focused on rebuilding our lives and managing the coffee shop, which had become my safe haven. Still, the shadow of Ryan and his parents lingered. One day, as I was closing the shop, Ryan appeared, looking disheveled and desperate, so different from the composed man I once knew. Amelia, please, I need to talk to you, he begged, his eyes searching mine for any trace of the compassion that used to be there. I hesitated, feeling a mix of emotions at the sight of him. What do you want, Ryan? I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. I can't afford the alimony and child support. I lost my job because of the scandal, and my parents, they are broke too, he admitted, his words hitting hard. That's not my problem, Ryan. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences, I said firmly, closing the door on our shared past for good. As I walked away, leaving Ryan behind, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been painful, full of betrayal and heartache, but it had led me to a place of strength and independence. Life moved on. Lucas grew up, his laughter and curiosity bringing joy to our home. The coffee shop thrived, becoming a warm, welcoming place for the community. I found happiness in simple pleasures, the smell of fresh coffee, Lucas's giggles, and the support of friends and family. Ryan and his parents became distant memories, their story a lesson on the consequences of betrayal and selfishness. My journey had taught me about resilience and the importance of standing up for myself. As I locked up the shop that evening, I looked at the sky, painted with hues of orange and pink as the day ended. I smiled, holding Lucas's hand tightly. Our future was uncertain, but it was bright. We were moving forward, one step at a time, into a new chapter of our lives.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. "Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company?" Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. "Let's just move on." Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more." Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.